Okay, so let's get our presentation to stage. So in the morning section, just to recap, we did, introduce why we are here, which is basically the Aspiralane graduate admission and the scholarship masterclass. We took that and we started with understanding the graduate journey and the top 3 overseas graduate study destinations. And for each of those graduate studies, we kind of looked at why people typically we choose them. We moved into trying to look at the materials that you actually need after understanding that when you want to make a graduate application that would be competitive for you to not only secure admission but also to secure scholarship. The application process doesn't begin when you start writing your personal statements or the CV of a thing. The application process actually begins from the time when you try to get clarity on your career objective, the point where you start thinking of what program you are going for, and as well as, trying to choose destination country. And we mentioned a couple of factors that you could consider when you are doing all of that. Then we proceeded to, start looking at nitty gritty of those 4 stages from career objective and program selection through academic profile optimization, professional profile enrichment, and actually preparing the application document, which is basically your CV, your SOP, your scholarship essay, and other application essay, as well as your recommendation letter. Then we kind of ended the morning session by then diving into some of these application documents, the ones that you needed to produce by yourself, not the one that a recommender is going to bring in. And before we dig deeper into each of those individual materials, we provided a brief summary that is going to guide you when you are providing those materials and stating emphatically that clarity shortens the application journey and reduces wasted efforts. Okay, and what that means is that with that clarity, with that clear roadmap that you've built around your vision, combining clarity and that sense of direction that drives your momentum towards that successful application, combining it with your vision, which is in line with, in alignment with your program of study. That once you do that and support that with full execution, that in most cases precipitate as your result, right? And we ended, the program in the morning by asking you if money and geography were not barrier, what field would you study and why? I think that's just a test to know if you are strongly motivated by whatever it is that is motivating you now, or whether there is something else that could have been a better option, something that you love, something you derive so much passion in. You don't necessarily need to change it, but I think when people ask these questions, I think we are looking at, are there something not in the periphery that you could potentially bring in to strengthen your application, right? If someone has said, yeah, I would have loved to venture into artificial intelligence for XYZ reason, you don't necessarily need to venture into that, but we can look for application of artificial intelligence in your chosen field. So that was what I was looking for when I asked this question. But of course, we were able to also have that perfect alignment of what crafting your personal vision would look like, you defining your end goal. And then from there, comparing what that end goal is going to be with the program of choice that you are pursuing, and then the skill set that you've acquired along the way. Once you've compared that, that should tell you whether you are a good fit for the program. So even before the admission body reviews your application to decide that, you on your own should have decided whether you are a good fit. And what happens is that once you are able to define whether you are a good fit, in most cases, it gives you this extraordinary confidence to push ahead and get things done. With that confidence, you can't compare the confidence of someone who is actually preparing their CV, writing their statement because they have clarity and sense of direction of where they are going, with someone who is kind of confused, right? A lot of people have come to me and say, man, I really want to do master, but I'm not sure in what. Like, I want to do masters in chemistry, but I'm not quite sure where. So that means you don't have a sense of clarity yet. So the first step is to solve that problem of self clarity, right? And that took us to the gap to growth framework, where we do a self audit by assessing your academic qualification, your professional experience, and then how ready you think you are for a master's program. And what would usually happen is that when you do that, you realize that there might be some skills gap, right, that you need to then upgrade. So once you've identified them, they could be skills, they could be scores, it could be experience that you need to kind of get. Then you do all you can to map out a plan to actually, what we call the growth plan. Set a timeline, set micro targets, tiny bits of targets here and there. Could be 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, but in a space of time before you know what is happening, you've been able to cover those skill gaps. And you move from, someone who has a skill gap to someone who is now fully fit for the program of choice. And we ended by, kind of mapping out the 5-step global admission framework that will allow you to fully prepare your mind and your experience and everything even before you start preparing your document. And I mentioned that that is clearly starting from that end goal we are saying that you must define. Because once you've defined it, you are able to then understand the gap that exists between where you are and that particular angle. Then you move into the growth plan. And while you are doing that, you need some sort of guidance from a mentor, from a counselor, from an agent, whichever one the case might be. And once you follow that growth framework, in most cases, a successful graduate application is usually what we precipitate out. So this afternoon, we are going to be looking at 3 different core cornerstone of your graduate application as well as your scholarship. Because the only time you will have the opportunity to speak to someone is during your interview. But before you have that opportunity, you need to convince someone who is looking at your academic credentials that you want kind of inviting for that interview. Okay, because usually thousands of people apply for, or hundreds of people apply for a particular program in a school, and you need to show that you are an exceptional student. And you do that by preparing a very competitive application. And that is where we come in. So you must understand what material might be needed for your application, and then spend some time making it the best it can be. So it shouldn't be something you just wiggle. No. It shouldn't be something you just wake up, put together in a hurry. It shouldn't be something you do while you are traveling. It shouldn't be something you do in a marketplace. It's something that you stay in a very calm environment. You are prepared for it. You move into it knowing that, yes, this is what I want to do. Okay. You gather materials that would help you. You read through whatever it is, and then you get those knowledge. If possible, it depends on whether you are an analytical person or more of an analog person. If you're an analog person, take your pen, scribble things down on a sheet of paper to provide that guidance for you. And then prepare, first of all, what I call a master CV. So what I had asked you guys to send through It's a master CV, but a whole lot of people did not send that. They just maybe sent me what they currently have. And some people did not even send it at all. But it would have been really, really helpful if we have all of those CVs and we're able to specifically speak to you and give you guidance on what you need to improve on and all of that. But anyway, there are four key things, four key drivers that you need to think about, when preparing your CV. Some people would typically think that the best way to give them orientation on how to prepare their CV is to tell them what needs to be on the CV. But the danger is that these things are not exhaustive. So to be on a safe side, why telling you what needs to be in there and how to structure it, it also makes sense that you are told what not to bring in there or what common mistakes people make trying to put together their CV. So I will start by what makes an academic CV stand out. Because you are applying for a graduate program, whether it's a PhD or a master's, this is an academic CV that you are going to be using, not a job CV. Okay. So you want to make sure that one, your academic excellence comes first, and then that you back it up with your professional qualification. And when you are doing that, whether it's within your school heading, whether it's within experiences that you have, be it volunteer, internship, full-time role, project that you've done, leadership positions that you've had, whatever it is, there are three things that you must make sure that is being captured in your CV if your CV must stand out. Because trust me, during this application, apart from your SOP, your CV is the number one thing that typically stands out to decide whether you get a graduate program or not. So when you are doing that, the first thing is that you need to focus more on impact over activity. I can tell you that 90% of student CV that I've seen out there, they will typically just be mentioning activities that they have done in a particular role. Let's say you were a student union president. You see people saying, I was the president of this for X number of time. During my time, I coordinated students. I did X, I did Y. I organized orientation for new students. I organized conferences. I did X. Whatever it is. Those are just activities. The best way to think about impact is, as a result of me doing this, what did I achieve? And like I said in the money, if you struggle to think about the outcome of your activities, think of if you didn't do that, what would have been the consequences? That's a faster way of understanding what an outcome. All right. So you must focus more on building an impactful CV rather than an activity-based CV. So your first, we provided you a template, right? I don't know if we've made that template downloadable, but we should be able to do that downloadable so that you're able to download it and just fix your own record within the template that you have there. There are similar templates, but I think about 4 of them. So focus on impact, not activities. And this impact, where possible, if you can quantify them. Okay, they have to be something I can measure. It can't just be I did ABC, I organized conference. What about that? Okay, you can say, you organize academic conference that allowed X amount of people to gain ABC knowledge. Okay, you've quantified it. We know the number of people that benefited from that conference, and now we know what they benefited from. Or you can focus more on, as a result of what they benefited from, what did those people then do? It could be, imagine that I'm a mentor, right? And I've mentored 10 people. And as a result of my mentorship, those people actually got admitted into top universities. That is impact. In my years of mentorship, mentored X number of students, supporting them through their graduate application, out of which 7 of them have landed fully funded scholarship. 20 of them have landed fully funded scholarship, and so on. So that is the impact. What it means is that whatever activity you've performed led to something. It wasn't a waste. You were good at what you were doing, and that was why you got an outcome. Because again, the same example I used in the money, if you are a president of a country, it's not enough. What people are interested in is what you did for your country while you were president. How was the economic situation? How was the living standard for people? How was security? All of those things are the things that your presidency will be judged on. So it's the same thing in every little thing that you are doing. People want to know the impact that you are bringing. And that is where these things become very critical for your CV. So show measurable achievements. Then evidence of excellence. This is very important because imagine that you did something where the impact, the required impact is supposed to be 50%, but then you report that your impact is 5%. Yes, you've used a number, but that doesn't show excellence. It simply tells the person that, yeah, you did this, there was an outcome, but it wasn't an exceptional outcome. So you want to make sure that whatever you are doing comes forth with exceptional outcome so that you are able to bring in that exceptional outcome into your CV. All right. So is the part of the reason when I support people or when I work with people, I try to push them to be the best version of themselves, to do the best that they can do. Because I understand that if they are able to do that, then when they want to tell the story, or when people hear their story, what people will be hearing are evidence of excellence, not evidence of doing the bare minimum. So quantify results with numbers, outcomes, recognitions. It's not only number. Number is not the only thing that shows excellence. The outcome of it, of whatever it is that you've done, shows excellence, right? The recognition or award that you've gotten, you were the president for XYZ, leading your students' union through COVID-19 period that, made your students' union to give you this Leadership Excellence Award of it. So that recognition shows that you were good at whatever it was that you were doing. Okay, so evidence of excellence can come in form of numbers. It can come in form of the outcome of what you did. It can come in form of recognition, awards that you receive as a result of that. Then you have the relevance rule. You need to highlight research and leadership connected to your goal. Because remember what I told you in the morning, I said, there are two things, and then there's something in between them. Your program is between your future aspiration and what you've done in the past. And the story needs to come from the past through the present to the future. And having that, when you are now focusing on the future, you need to make sure that you are using things that will be relevant to that future. Okay. Because sometimes you realize that there are so much impact that you made in a particular role. You don't necessarily need to bring all of those impacts. Bring the ones that you think support the dream and the aspiration, the program fit that you are kind of applying for. So that is where the relevance rule kind of come to play. Now that we've understood the best way to make an academic CV stand out, let's look at the structure that actually wins your admission. Because sometimes people have all of these things that I've mentioned under what makes an academic CV stand out. But the way and manner in which it has been presented makes it extremely difficult for the person who is reading it to read it. If you see my CV is structured
In fact, I have a CV that is more than 15 pages. But trust me, if I give you that CV in a space of 30 seconds to a minute, you understood the structure and the things I'm trying to say in the CV. Because I have these black headers that shows you section by section. You understand that my CV, I've been able to show you my education, my career objective, my professional work experience, my volunteer experience, leadership and honors, my paper, whatever it is. In a space of 30 seconds, you can screen through and you'll be able to, at a higher level, say what, whether that CV, like what's looking at or not. So that's the snapshot that we are talking about. Okay. Concise personal profile. That's the one I call the career summary. So you have your name, your address, phone number, whatever, LinkedIn, if you can hyperlink. And then the next thing is a snapshot of your personal profile, which is typically your career summary. Okay. Then you move that one or two sentences, it's fine. You move then into the core credentials, the education section, the research section, your publication. Because it's an academic CV, you need to present these things first. But if you were to be a professional CV, then maybe your work experience comes first. Then among your work experience, anyone that is more related to academics should come first, and research should come first. And then the ones that are outside academics and all of that can then come later. Right. And while you are then doing that, you need to think about the differentiators you have. Okay. The awards are the things that can differentiate you. Have you had any recognition in the things that you are doing? So when you have, and that is why, because some people would want to put awards under the various stages of their CV where they got that. Some might put it under their education if it's an educational award. Maybe they got a scholarship for their PhD. You see them put it in there, that kind of thing. But if you understand that award is a differentiator, again, depending on how many of them you have, you can actually create a section for awards and recognition. It doesn't have to be a monetary award. Any certification that you have for things that you've done, not like online courses, not that kind of certification. Whether it's your village people who gave it to you, it is something, it's a recognition that you can bring into your CV. Then, of course, publication, if you have any, is always great. If you don't have publication in international journal, I recommend that is where we usually build this independent study that you could do and write up in columns and in Medium. And you can actually bring in the title that you have there, publications in Medium, and then you put it in there. It's not standard, but rather than not have anything at all, that is something that you can potentially bring in to distinguish yourself. Could be like Elvis, you are in business, you can write up a column discussing about a particular thing in business. It could be business intelligence, it could be the use of AI in business, it could be the future of business. What you think is your personal assessment, but you could do potential research and then write it up as if it's an academic report. And who knows, if you take it like extremely serious, you can actually publish in some of these business journals, right? If you understand what it these days with AI in a space of 1 week, people can actually do an extensive research, do a couple of in-person interview, right? Get those real number from the field and use it to put together an amazing paper that you can publish. Okay. So these things, they are not rocket science. In fact, artificial intelligence have made all of these things uniquely possible in a few number of days. It's not something you need 1 year or thereabouts to kind of build. And the products that we are also building is actually having some of those capabilities to help researchers, right? Then, of course, your leadership and professional skills. So these are the differentiators. You see that I have called the differentiators because those are the things that make you stand out. An average CV will just have the, your education, the research and publication, and there is it. But among all of that, there are things that can make you stand out. And those are these things that I have called out. And because you know that they make you stand out, it makes a whole lot of sense to have sections for them. Don't have awards or publication or leaderships that you experience that you've had under some educational thing or under a role that you have at a company. You should be able to have a separate section where you bring them out. Okay, so now we understand what makes an academic CV stand out, and at the same time, we know what the structure should look like. The next thing is, what are the common mistakes to avoid? Because while you are doing this, you could see that actually you have your structure, you have these sections that I'm talking about, you have your snapshot, the core credentials, you have your differentiators, and you have, you've written it in a way that is impactful. You've shown evidence of excellence. You've used the relevance rule. But then you've made empty claims. Your visual is not appealing. Your formatting is all over the place. Things have not, like, when you look at my CV, you see that the dates are in one type of format, month, year, month, year. And at the extreme end, you see it straight arranged that way. Nice formatting, bullet points under experience. You use the same type of capitalization, for instance, for the name of organization that you've worked for and the location. And then the role that follows, and of course the year, the same for maybe a smaller casing, but consistency across the entire thing gives you this visual hierarchy that makes it easy for people to understand what you have in your CV. So, and the bullet point you have there, I usually tell people try to make it one line. Of course, definitely has to be one sentence, but make that one sentence one line. If it has to be more than one line, it should not be more than two lines. Anything in your CV, a bullet point that exceeds your second line shouldn't be there. Find a way to cut it short. Okay. Of course, there were times, I made that sort of mistake, but having been in a position to review student CV, both in academic profession, in academic field and professional field, I can tell you for free that when you have these long sentences that run over two lines, no one reads it. Okay, so there's no need using it to cluster your stuff. Okay, so too much text or inconsistent style, literally, like avoid cluttered layouts or inconsistent formatting. If you think that every name of the organization and school that you've attended should all be capitalized and bolded, then everywhere such thing appears must be capitalized and bolded. If you feel that all your role needs to be in small letter, everywhere you've mentioned role must be in small letter. If you feel like your dates should be at extreme right, everywhere you have dates, they must be at extreme right. If you feel like everything below your row must be in a particular bullet point, not you use an arrow bullet point here, you use a dot bullet point there, you use a block bullet point. No, there must be consistency in your style and all of that. And then, of course, listing without results or context becomes another problem. For instance, your leadership experience. There are some people, you check their CV, what they have there, President of Student Union Government, 2021 to 2022. And that is it. No, that is empty claim. So you need to put in there and also have a couple of bullet points that tells what that role entails in the first bullet and what you achieved doing that. Okay, so you need to be able to substantiate your claim. Then generic voice, unclear focus, or copy paste objectives. It's a no no. And in most cases, it's very strongly advised that you use action words to kind of begin whatever you want to say. I led, no need for the I, of course, led in reported speech, led this, um, obtained this, oversaw this, orchestrated that kind of thing. Use action word to show what you actually did. All right. And then, of course, you have the style art method for preparing CV, which basically is just you focusing on your achievement, right? And then use that to learn how to craft impact-driven bullet points that highlights your contributions in whatever it is that you're talking about. So you should always know that your CV is your personal sales speech to the admission and scholarship committee. So you need to use that opportunity to sell yourself in the best way possible. Once you are done preparing the CV, it's always advisable to try to share with people, your mentor, your counselor, whoever, to help you review. It could even be your peers, right? Ask someone to look at it a second time to see if there is something that you might have missed or there is some sort of error that is somewhere. All right. So I'm going to pause here. Elvis, is there any question on this? Is this kind of clear to you? Are there things that you never thought about that you are hearing today? Or how does this come to your NC?
Yeah, there is a lot actually that I didn't know about this CV structure I'm just learning today. But is it possible? Would you be able to share give us an example, like show us a CV that we could use for an example? Because I think it would be more visually clear if I'm looking at a structured CV, like just exactly the same way you have been teaching us.
Mm, okay. So I will start with the template that I shared with you guys. And then I can actually, I don't know if any of my CV are here. I have a CV that is online, but it's probably outdated. It's as old as 24 years ago. That could also be something. But let me start from the template that I shared with you guys. Give me a minute to pull this up. Okay. Did you see this particular CV guide? So if you go to this Cambridge CV guide, you'll be able to see a couple of CVs that have been kind of explained here. Your bucket CV, which is the one we call the master CV, and how you could potentially draft things, see your education, work experience, leadership, positions of responsibilities, your skills, language, extracurricular. And then this guide kind of went ahead to start talking about competency requirements, evidence you need to collect in order to make a good CV, right? And then we provided you with some nice template. If you go further, you see much more of what a good CV would look like and what to cut off, what not to cut off, and how to adapt a CV, types of CVs, and the rest of them, right? But I also added a template, which is this that I need to, and that template has clear explanation of what to put in where, right? So let's start with this one. They are almost the same thing. It's just how you demarcate sections that kind of differs. So you have your name at the top, you have your phone number and your email, and potentially an address if you want. But this issue where people usually add their date of birth and local government of origin, all of that is completely unnecessary. It just take away the space you would have used to actually provide a nice more information about you. So the only thing that is not here is the career summary that I did mention, and I will try to update, also show you my, wait, give me a minute. Let me try to also download that 2021 CV I was talking about. So great. So this is a typical example. I think I did share. Okay, this one is the guide that you are going to have access to. You already have access to this, right? And of course, if you have time, do go through it, read and see what they are saying. And you also see some samples that they have kind of annotated with what needs to be where it needs to be, what you don't need to keep where, how to different ways of writing, presenting the same information and all of that, right? So you will see that on the various sample CVs that you have in this. So there are so many of them, different ways. There's no one size fits all. So the fact that I did my own in a particular way doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best way. Okay. There are different ways of, putting the same things. Some people will put their dates on the right, some put it on the left. It's completely fine, but there has to be consistency. You can't have your education, the date for your education on the left, and then for your experiences, you're having the dates on the right or something like that. Throwing things all about. There has to be that clear consistency in terms of how you arrange your CV end to end, right? So if you look at this, there are more than 10 examples that you can get on this Cambridge CV guide. Okay. But more so, I wanted to then show this specific um, template that I'm asking you guys. You can just download this and then use it to just impute, key in your own CV content. So I'll walk you through this, and after that, I will then share a couple, portion of my 2021 CV, just for you to then see that what I'm saying here, see it in action properly. So when you look at this, you see that this is kind of structured in different hierarchical way. First is to look at the different section. At the top, you have name, and you can see that the name is written in capital. Of course, the square bracket doesn't need to be there. It's just using it to hold things together. But in your real CV, the square brackets are not meant to be there. So you have that your name, phone number, and email. And at most, another thing you might add here is like you hyperlink your LinkedIn and maybe your home address or your school address, depending. But this should not take more than 3 lines. Top 2 lines. If you need to add this other extra thing, it should not like go beyond 3 lines. In fact, in my own CV, like what I did was have that as 3 lines. My name first, address, because I was still in Cambridge at that point, use my department's address, and then use the other line for my phone number, my email, and my Cambridge website's link, right? So that was what I had there. But again, this doesn't mean that you must always put your name in capital letter. You can put it only capitalize the first letters and things in small letter. That is fine. But where your consistency in formatting then comes to play is these different sections. For instance, your education. You see, we've written education in capital letter. Work and research experience is capital. Leadership roles capitalized. Additional skills and activities also capitalized. Now you move down within each category. You see the school name, which is your university name, your high school name. Then you go into the work and research experience. You see the current / most recent employer, all capitalized. You move down to previous employer. So the employer names all capitalized. Under leadership role, the society you held that leadership role on also capitalized. You see that consistency we're talking about. And then you also see that name of the organization is typically followed by the city and country on the right hand side. City and country, city and now the roles that you had at your workplaces then are followed with year, like the timeline that you've had that role. In some cases, people will take this year and put it alongside where they have the employer. You might not have any problem if you only had one role at that employer. But when you then have, like for those who might get promotion, it's always good to show that you have worked for a company and then you had promotion in that company. It's always a plus. It means that you work at a lower status, and because you were exceptional, someone decided to kind of promote you. So you show that. So if you are in that condition and you've added your year, your timeline where you have the name of employer, you see that you won't be able to show the period of time your first role lasted before you were promoted and the period of time for that second role within that organization. So for that, it makes sense that the timeline for that role is kind of in the same line, on the same line with the role itself. So previous role, you can see the month, year for that particular organization. And underneath it, you have bullet points, 4 or 3. But typically, you focus more on your achievements. If you need to say anything about the roles and responsibility, it should just be in one sentence, one line, or nothing more than 2 lines in your first bullet point. And the reason why, in some cases, these roles and responsibility make sense is that imagine that you work for McKinsey and Company and someone else works for one oil and gas company, and both of them have the same role called associate. Associate is a general role or even business analyst across different organizations that could mean significantly different things. And so under that condition, it makes sense that you introduce what the roles and responsibility of that role actually entails. But you shouldn't do it more than one line or more than one bullet point. Then the subsequent bullet points you have, then you can see I've written that as achievement number 1, achievement number 2, and then maybe overall performance in that role. The same thing across board. And that is how to build an impact-driven CV. Those achievements are the things that are making this exceptionally, focus. Even the leadership role, you can see the leadership role again, similar thing. The first line, what the roles and responsibility of that leadership role is. And in some cases, depending who did you report to, because the reason why the reporting is very essential is that when you report into higher executive, I think it shows people that like you have played at the top league, right? So if you do report into executive role or managerial role, if you're not a manager, then it makes a whole lot of sense to just mention them that on this role, your responsibility is X, Y, Z, reporting to the CEO of the company or whatever it is, and some key activities that you basically perform. But when I watch CVs, what I see is that people might have like 5 different bullet points, and each of these bullet points are basically telling you about key activities, about another one talk about people they report to, another one talk about responsibility of the role, and nothing about achievement, nothing about performance, nothing to actually show impact in that particular sense. So that is how to like kind of tailor all of your CV end to end, right? So let me now also bring up my. So let's look at, like I said, I can update. You can see the latest date you see there is 2021. Okay, 2022. So this was last updated 2022. But it still has those things that we are talking about, right? Um, you see the career objective that we talked about, right? And here I just have two sentences or three. I have 8 years of experience working in electronics and other related topics, from optics to strongly correlated electronic systems, ligand design for complexes, magnetic and multifunctional materials. I have developed useful scientific knowledge for technology innovation through experimental research and computational methods. I aspire to use my skills to solve problems across industries and various institutions. You see how I just kind of captured my career objective and summary in 3 lines, thereabouts, roughly. And because this is an academic CV, so to say, I went ahead to bring in my current research. Of course, this is a PhD CV, so not a master's one. So bring in my current research interest and experience. Okay. Because this is an academic CV, I want to place things that are related to academics first before the person that is going to be reviewing this, before I then went into my education. Of course, because there are so many education stuff here, I didn't want it to start running long. That was why I made it into two. So there is no one size fits all, but just be consistent with what you are doing. You can see that here, my career objective, current research and interest, education, and if you go down, selected academic work experience and all that, selected fellowship, scholarship, and other academic awards, selected publications. These are all written in capital letter. So remember, I told you invited talks, scientific skills, professional skills and ability, membership of learned societies, entrepreneurial experience, social volunteer course and impact, other work experience. This is now where non-academic related things started coming up, right? Selected leadership and board members role, other relevant experience. You see that all of this all have, they are all capitalized. And then you come back to the name of employers or name of universities, they are also all capitalized, followed by the UK of a thing, where the location, right? All capitalized, all capitalized. Then you come for the row, again, the name of the institution, wherever capitalized, start codon also capitalized, University of Cambridge, all of that capitalized, University of Nigeria. And this is that example that I was giving you when within an organization, you have two roles. So this shows that within University of Nigeria and Nsukka, I started as a graduate assistant lecturer and then promoted to assistant lecturer. All right. So things like that and or down. And the same thing, if you look at the way and manner in which certain things have been presented, for instance, this is a typical example of what I was telling you when I said, if your organization or you think your organization is not known, try to kind of have a brief description about that organization, right? Africa for Our Dream Education Initiative, Cambridge, UK, and Nigeria. I just try to use one sentence to kind of describe what this foundation does. A foundation empowering minority students through education and partnership between UK and African researchers, right? And then my role, right? And then, of course, you see the first one. This tells you more around the responsibility of that role. Coordinating the activities of the foundation, helped with charity accounting and annual financial statement, right? But then in these two bullet points, you can see the impact, helped over 15 African students secure scholarship to UK, including at Cambridge and Oxford, via mentorship and outreach events. Initiated more than 10 research partnerships between African researchers and Cambridge researchers across 6 disciplines. So you can see those impacts that we are talking about. And you can also see that these impacts are written like in one sentence, one line, right? And most things you're going to see here are maximum of 2 lines. But in most cases, you will always see like a one-line thing, 2 bullet points, 3 bullet points, as the case might be. Okay. Come here, look at all of them are on one line, focusing more on the impact. So that is it. A typical example. Another thing is how you can quantify certain things, because we talk about impact, we talk about measurable impact, but there's also this bit that has to do with how do you actually stand out? How do you actually sell yourself? And I will use this selected fellowship and all of that to give you an example. Now, let's look at this. For instance, let's say the CAS Future Leader Award. I'd not just give a single line. By the way, I had to just squeeze it this way because I was trying all I can not to go past 6 pages. I think I prepared this for, there was a program and they said the CV should not be more than 6 pages. So CAS Future Leader Award 2020 in brackets. I didn't just stop there. Sometimes you mention an award, some might not even understand what that award was for, especially if it's not a prominent award. Although CAS Future Leader is a prominent one, but it's prominent in the science community. It's not that prominent in the non-science community. So you don't know who is going to be reading this. So you need to make sure that your CV is inclusive. So irrespective of who is reading it, they can still make sense out of it, right? So here, I'm saying given to 30 scholars. If I just say, hey, I got a CAS Future Leader Award, you might not appreciate how competitive that award is. When you hear that it is given to 30 scholars around the world, mind you, around the world, not just in Cambridge, not just in Nigeria, not just in Lagos, around the world, who are blazing a trail towards scientific leadership. So what that is telling you is that when you look around the world in scientific leadership, that these are early career folks that you were counted among top 30 who are blazing a trail towards scientific leadership. Okay, so you begin to appreciate that. Now, let's look at even where you have like my graduation, like this third best graduating student. When I graduated from UNN, like I was the third best. So when you say third best, someone could say, okay, not best, not even second best, right? They might not understand what that third best actually means. But you strengthen the impact of this and how the person who is reading this quantify this by then giving this 3 out of 12,000 students. So when someone hears that 12,000 students graduated and your result is the third best result, I think the feeling is completely different from when you just say you are a third best graduating student. So these are the things we mean when we talk about, you being able to sell yourself, you being able to quantify the thing that you are doing. Look at Presid Fellowship. 1 out of 100 out of 10,000 applicants, a federal government of Nigeria sponsored postgraduate fellowship for outstanding first-class students. So this person is saying that 10,000 first-class students competed for this fellowship, and you were one of the 100 that was selected. Okay. So you can see how trying to use numbers to quantify situations and things that you are doing make you an extraordinary person. The best graduating students, Faculty of Physical Sciences, and you are given the number. And when we say best, we are looking at, of course, once you've seen the 3 out of 12,000, that's enough, right? But just to put that more in perspective, when you're best in your faculty graduated 650 students and you are the best. Your department graduated 119 students and you are the best among 119 students. So people begin to appreciate this when you put in numbers to them. Cambridge Trust Scholarship, for the particular competition, 1 out of 5 out of 1,500 competitive scholarship for PhD program at University of Cambridge. So 1,500 application to a top university as Cambridge for them to choose 5 people, and you were one of them. ISDB Merit Scholarship for Technology, 1 out of 8 out of 1,200 applicants. So you can see how quantifying these things in your CV makes you stand out. Like now that I'm saying it to you, you can imagine what that feels like. Compare that to if I had said, yeah, I got a Cambridge Trust Scholarship. Or if I had said, yeah, I got the ISDB Merit Scholarship for Technology. Or if I said I was the third best graduating student of my set in UNN. The feel is different when you hear the quantification of that number. Okay. So yeah, so these are some of the examples of how you can clearly structure. If I give you this CV, you don't even need to read the content. Just reading these headings that you have here will tell you where you want to kind of focus on. Selected fellowship and scholarship, publications, you've just seen it, like list of 18 publications. Selected conferences, okay, it's conferences that you've attended. I can see the number. I can see how these are not just conferences that I participated at as OES member. It's either I've presented, made an oral presentation or a poster presentation. Invited talks. He was even invited to come, and this is not me registering to do something, but being invited to make a presentation, right? Scientific. So those headers makes it easier for the person who is reading your CV to run through them and understand what your CV is talking about. And based on that, if there are places that they kind of are more interested in, they can just pay more attention, right? They pause for a minute and look through what that is saying. Okay. Does that make sense? Has this been helpful?
Yeah, it's been really helpful. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Okay, cool. So we have 30 minutes. Ooh. Okay, so let's run with it. The next is now the SOP. And usually I call the SOP, I call it your story strategically told. It's your story, so you need to own it. But you also need to own how you tell that story. And here, again, just like we did in CV, 4 categories of things that we want to focus on. First is how you actually own that story, how you tell the story, how you position yourself strategically. And underneath that, there are 3 key things you need to always put at the back of your mind when you are writing your statement of purpose. Now, there's a clear difference between your statement of purpose and your personal statement. Personal statements in most cases are usually used for undergraduates because you want them to explore more about their personality than research, innovation, and all that. Of course, Your personality could match some innovative idea, depending on what motivates you. But for statement of purpose, is typically tied into the innovation you want to, the change you want to make in your field. Okay. So first, you want to make sure that it flows chronologically. Your story formula must be starting from the past through the present to the future. And that was exactly what we've said before, and how that fits into your program. So when you think about the past, you are looking at what has prepared you for this moment. You need to capital. It could be challenges, it could be sufferings of other people, it could be some motivation, it could be experience that you've had. Whatever it is, what has prepared you? Then you move into the present. What are you doing now? I want to understand. The admission body want to understand. The scholarship committee want to understand what you are doing currently. And that has to tie up with what has prepared you for that moment. So if you go in your past and you talk about science, and you come in your present, you talk about business without linking them up, then you are writing a disjointed statement of purpose. If you continue on a science line, if the past is about science and the present is science, that is awesome. But that does not mean that if your past is science driven, but your present is business, that disqualifies you. It doesn't. What disqualifies you is your inability to connect that science path to your business future or your business present, and maybe your business future as well. It could be an epiphany. At some point, you get to understand that science is actually a combination of art and the so-called science. There's a piece of science that has to do with art. And that art kind of resonates with what drives the business world. And so that connection is there. With that epiphany, you decided that you need to pivot and use this scientific curiosity, this analytical and problem-solving mindset that you've gotten in the scientific world to drive business intelligence, to drive business outcome, to drive whatever it is that you are currently doing. And then you've actually seen fulfillment in it, because presently, this is how you are using the application of science to drive things that you are doing in business. And this is actually what the impact is. And with these limited resources that you already have and already making this much impact, imagine what the future could look like if you are trained under this master program at an institution like Cambridge, like Harvard, like MIT, like whatever it is. The sky is not just going to be your limit, but your starting point. So you can see how you are able to connect the past, the present, and the future. Then that future needs to speak to what you aim to achieve. Now, this achievement is now where you kind of distinguish yourself from the rest. Why others might say, I want to suppose, very generic achievement. I want to become an investment banker and help banks manage XYZ. You could be more innovative. You could also want to become an investment banker, but you want to bring in your coding skills, or whatever it is, to build model that could support investment bankers. So with a click of buttons, complete tasks that would have taken them weeks to complete. Just an example. And then, of course, why this program and this university? You need to capture that. Okay. So once you've structured your story in that way, then it flows and gives some sense of meaning to the person who is reading it. Now you move to the second bullet point, which is purpose driven. You must show clear motivation and direction. Something must be motivating you. And in all honesty, the more you show independence of those motivation, the better. Rather than your dad told you to do this. I was speaking to someone 2 days ago who told me that he decided to go for mechanical engineering because the dad felt there were more opportunity. Yeah, why that is true, we can't say such a thing in his personal statement. So I've kind of given him an assignment and I say, just go and research what are the opportunities that you have. What are the problems under this field? And if you do a master's, what are the opportunities that you could, what solution can you create? What difference can you make? Among other things that I've asked him to kind of do, right? And when he comes back, we are going to be able to match those. And then those things becomes his motivation, his desire to solve those challenges, making that his motivation is a better option because it solves a lot of problems for you. It shows that you have that independent thinking. It shows that you are thinking beyond yourself, which is what scholarship bodies are usually looking for. So you must show a clear motivation and sense of direction. Motivation, what is motivating you now? Sense of direction, where clearly you are headed for. And then, of course, the distinct voice. You need to be authentic. You need to be unique to you, not cliche and all manner of things. Okay. So once you've gotten these three things, you are in the right track to crafting the world best SOP. Now let's look at the content of your SOP. Someone can tell the story of the past, present, future, and answer the question of why this program or university. Show clear motivation and direction, and the voice that you hear when you read that sounds authentic. But then they miss out from the key elements of a powerful SOP, which is, can your reader actually read the first sentence and want to read the second one? Can they finish the first paragraph and they are curious to see what you have to say in the second paragraph? Or would they read the first paragraph and jump to conclusion to see what you've said there? And you still don't make sense, they dump it. It's all about those elements of a powerful SOP that decide what happens when your readers are reading this. So the first thing you need to think about is that there's going to be hundreds, thousands of SOPs flying around. These guys don't have the time to pay those sort of, before they pay attention, you need to give them something from the beginning. And even if they decide to read it through, someone can just read it like newspaper without getting anything from what you've written. So you need to kind of feed their curiosity. You want to make sure that your opening has a hook with a sticky base, an opening that grabs attention. Someone reads it, unique, I've never heard of this. What is this guy trying to say? I want to read the second one. Then you follow it with a logical narrative of growth and preparation, focusing on achievement, right? And when you are telling this story, it's always very, very important. Okay, let me leave that for the traps that you avoid. I think we talked about that there. So you have this logical narrative. This logical, the word logical is bringing that connectivity I was talking about. That even if your story are disjointed, in terms of when they stand alone, it seems as if they are not related. You must have a way of connecting your paragraphs. If you need to jump from A to B, there must be a string that makes it clear why that jump was imminent or why that jump was necessary. Okay. And then remember that you might be writing one-page SOP of a thing. And sometimes when people read something from the beginning towards the end, they forgot what they read, what you were saying at the beginning. And so for that reason, you want to make sure you finish strong. You show clear career vision and program fit. So that if there is nothing this person understands from your SOP, he's taking that clear and strong finish away. So that means that you need to have clarity of your goals. You need to show authentic voice. To guide you further, I've also included the 5 golden questions every SOP must answer. If you've written your SOP and you've constructed everything that we've said in 1 and 2, but when I ask the question, why is this person interested in doing business, a master's in business administration? If I can't find that answer in your SOP is missing an opportunity to actually make a difference. If I can't find why you are interested in the university or the program, you are losing a huge chance. If I can't find what your preparation for that program has been so far, that could be in your demonstration of the skill set that you have. It could be in the experience that you have. All of those experiences will tell me if you've prepared yourself ahead of time for this program. The things you've done. Then I want to understand your goal. If you get this program, if you get this scholarship and finish this master, then what? And then most importantly, will I be able to know why I should offer you this admission by reading your SOP? Should I be able to tell why this scholarship is meant for you once I'm done reading this? So these are the questions that you need to ask yourself while you are preparing this. And unless you are able to answer them, your SOP is not complete. So that is one thing you must understand. All right. Now, just like we did for your CV, there are also some traps you need to avoid. There are a lot of them that people make, but we've kind of selected just 3 here. The first is copying samples. Copying generic templates kills your own authenticity. In the folder that has been shared with you, you will see some sample SOP. You cannot try to structure your own to be exactly like that. Maybe the person started by telling a childhood story. Your SOP must not start with a childhood story. The person probably started that because there is a childhood experience that definitely shaped what they want to go for. So yours must not start that way. So don't copy samples and then try to tell stories around the sample. No. Just understand how the SOP is supposed to look. Read 1 or 2 samples to see the differences in what people have presented, and then build your own story. You can start by having all of the disjointed parts, answer them disjointedly, and then bring them together. You can talk about your past, talk about the present, the future, your fit, with all of that. Create a hook. Look at that part. Where do you want to talk about the past? Maybe first paragraph. Or maybe you want to even use the future to begin. And there's nothing that says that your first paragraph must be the past. No. Your first paragraph can be the present, it can be the future, it can be the past, whichever one. You can make them disjointed. These days, you have your artificial intelligence, your AI that can help you guide you with this thing. But remember, always remember that admission bodies, that many of these top schools will definitely use AI detector to screen your application. Of course, which is the reason the AI platform we are building a back end that evades AI detector. Because of course we understand how the AI detector works. And so your statements will be generated in a way that it evades those AI detector. We've tested it and it's working. We've generated some documents and passed them through the detector, and it was human detector proof, showing higher percentage of human written stuff, even though it was 100% generated by AI. Then the second is CV repetition. If graduate schools wanted you to repeat your CV on your SOP, no one is going to ask you to submit SOP. They'll just use your CV. But that doesn't mean that 100% of what you say in your SOP doesn't need to touch anything that is in your CV. I think the reason I'm speaking about this from experience, I know, in my early days of my career, when first time I heard about this, it got me a little bit confused. Like most of these things, my experience, whatever it is that this graduate school is looking for is in my CV. Why am I being told I can't copy my CV? That kind of thing. When I read your SOP, even if there is something in your CV that is being mentioned there, it needs to sound different. You need to give me more insight that your CV is not giving me. But when it tells me exactly what your CV is telling me, then there is a problem. So tell story, not list your CV. Then this part is the part that I would say that most Africans fall prey to. The being over emotional. Somebody went through struggles of life, financial, whatever it is, and you want to show it. No, you cannot show weakness in your SOP. What you should be showing is strength. Rather than say, because of Boko Haram, my school could not continue, and so I did WAEC and failed. Your statement should be saying that despite Boko Haram, and despite the fact that schools were not in section, you powered through and still came out in colors. So when you have challenges that you went through, but you still came out victorious, you need to bring them out. But you cannot communicate those challenges from position of weakness. They must be communicated from the position of strength. That despite all of this, you still came out top. Okay. So you must keep the tone balanced and professional. There's no need for overly emotional or very vague language. The statement of purpose is your story. And so I think the summary of what we are saying here is you should own it. All right. You should own it. Okay. I think I'm going to stop here because if I finish this scholarship part, I think it gives you a whole lot of assignments to do. Because two things we've given first assignments when we did this morning session. So the second assignment is for you to then draft a winning SOP, your CV, reconstruct your CV, and also submit it. Please, my support guy lady is going to share a form that you guys are going to use to submit that. So there are three things now. I think the first was the career roadmap of a thing. Now you have revamping your CV and sending through, using the template that you've been provided. Use these resources, and of course, this presentation that we've made now. Use that, revise the CV, write a one-page statement of purpose. It shouldn't be more than one page. And font size of, say, 12 or 11. Okay, so three documents that we are expecting. We'll send you a form to sort of upload them. And then I will take time. If you can upload it before Wednesday, I think it gives me time to really critique it and make comments and all of that. But if it's after Wednesday, I might not have the time to comment on it, but I will definitely read it, and then we can provide feedback live in during the class. But yeah, so from next session, we start from the purpose of a scholarship essay, and then there are quite a couple of slides on the scholarship part and how you can really prepare yourself. Sometimes some schools don't really have a different essay you need to write for the scholarship. It's the same thing that you are writing for your admission that will be used to judge your scholarship. A typical example is Cambridge. That's what Cambridge does. Cambridge doesn't have, although one or two other scholarship might require you to have additional write-up. But in most cases, majority of the scholarship you get from Cambridge will typically use your admission material. So when you find yourself in the situation where the scholarship application and admission application are the same, you just need to make sure that when you are writing your SOP, that you also factor some of the things that we will be discussing under the scholarship into that SOP. But otherwise, you can still follow whatever it is we'll be discussing next week for the scholarship. You'll still be able to follow them as is. Okay, so we are going to stop here. Any question, any clarification, anything you would want me to focus on for next week? It could be what we've covered. It could be, you wanting me to throw more light on something, show example, whatever it is. For next week, I'm happy to also prioritize that.
Yeah, I do have one question, sir. When it comes to building this CV, especially these academic CVs, and then you are trying to target different schools, you want to submit them. Do I need to, because you say something about aligning these things with the program, aligning them with purpose and everything. So do I need to create different CVs targeting? Because like you said, you earlier said that we are into science, and then before you started the whole consultation, you started learning about business and every other thing before you could be able to put up the CV. So do I need to always create different CVs for different purposes, or can I have a specific CV that can cover these different things, and then I can be able to be submitting them into different schools or different programs? That is my question.
So I think the truth is that most CVs, most CVs would kind of fit into any school. Okay. And that's because it's academic CV and essentially the same. It's different from a job or professional CV, where, for instance, if you are applying for investment banking job or someone else is applying for private equity or someone else is applying as a civil engineer, right? Irrespective of your field of study, you need to be able to showcase experience that are relevant to that, to what you're applying for. But in CV, in academic CV, unless you have publication, a lot of things will be essentially the same. Even when you have publication, let's say that your publication is in business management, but you want to do a master's in business intelligence, it's fine to leave that publication there. What the publication is telling them is that in the past, you've done something in business management and you were able to publish something. So that means that the quality of work you do in the academic field is very sound to be published. And so if we give you an opportunity, you will still be able to do sound work that allow you to get publication with this. However, the things that typically must change are your essays. Unless the scholarship that you are targeting with your essay or the program are exactly looking for something, you need to always look at eligibility criteria and what they are looking for. For instance, if you apply for Gates Cambridge in Cambridge University, or you apply for Rhodes in Oxford, or you apply for Chevening, these scholarships are looking for something completely different. And so the personal statement that you use to apply for them cannot be the same. If it's the same, then you are doing it wrongly. For instance, for Gates, Gates has 4 things that they tell you they are looking for: academic excellence, your leadership excellence, why Cambridge, and the impact of the work that you are trying to do. So if you write for Chevney, that is probably focusing just on your leadership and community development thing, and you've not shown these other things that Gates Cambridge is looking for, you will fail woefully for Gates Cambridge because you've taken an SOP that is meant for Chevney to apply to Gates. But their requirements, even though the leadership aspects kind of overlap, even in the context of the leadership, what Chevney is looking for is more tailored to you showing that leadership into your country, to your home country. But Gates doesn't necessarily need you to show it to your home country. So if you've applied to Gates and you've shown leadership that is not directed to your home country, and you are using that SOP to then apply to Chevney, then that is just the beginning of your failure. You might also realize that your CV, certain section of it, might need some tweaking depending on the program. But in most cases, it will always be the same CV, to be honest. If you've made your CV standard, organized, structured, it's academic, which means academic related things go at the top and professional related things come later. That would typically stand out and work anyway. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. It does a lot. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, then. We're going to stop here. Peter, it looks like your network has been like very bad. Okay, I guess your network is still bad. All right, then. I think we are going to end here. Thank you so much for your time. And by Monday, hopefully, Peace is going to share an email with the link for the things that we are supposed to do. And from there, hopefully, we'll see you next week.